Hello and welcome back to your career toolkit. I make career advice based on what I wish had been shared with me when I was doing my job searches, especially in the early stages. I work with a lot of clients who are in the midst of career changes in terms of looking for different jobs or actually embarking on their first ever job within the graduate market. So I aim to give you practical advice without the doom and gloom and no extra hype, and simply focus on the tips that actually work. If you're job hunting or first generation into a profession, or simply don't have the network to get into the roles that you're seeking, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe because I'm going to share the most useful things that you can do to accelerate your job search, finishing off with the most useful tip that you should be undertaking. So tip number 5 is turning the job description into a checklist and cross-referencing whether you have all of those details within your CV. Most recruiters read your CV not like a novel, but an actual checklist to see whether you are the most relevant candidate to their role. What most recruiters will be doing is having a top priority list of 3 to 5 things that they're looking for within a CV and using it to screen candidates that have the most relevant skills to their job description within their latest experience. So what I do with my candidates is look at the 5 to 7 must-haves and ensure that the candidate has these experiences listed out in the early part of their CV with written evidence of KPIs that they've met. Where possible, I will include metrics or feedback that they've been given for displaying this skill or experience. This will give the recruiter and the hiring manager confidence that you've actually carried out the tasks and actually given tangible benefits to the organizations that you've worked in, which in theory you should be able to replicate within the new organization that you're going to. So where possible, mirror the experience you're being asked. I'm not telling you to lie, but what I am telling you to do is make sure that your CV is adaptable and is echoing the experience that's been expected of you. Most people are qualified for the roles that they apply to, but they're just not subtitled and signaling to the recruiters and hiring managers that they have the relevant experience. So you don't want to get caught out in that. Number 4 is stop applying cold. A lot of people do the easy thing when it comes to job applications, especially on LinkedIn or on Indeed, where there's an easy apply button. What people often do is hit that and just expect recruiters and hiring managers to get back to them. I've heard horror stories whereby candidates have been ghosted or never hear back. Or I've equally heard stories of people just getting mass rejection emails where they're not even getting the clarity on what they can do to improve their CV. So this is where, as I say, rejection should become your best friend. What you need to do is find someone within that team that you're applying to, or the recruiter themselves, or even the hiring manager. Once you've identified a relevant person within the team that you want to apply for, or a HR recruiter for that role, or a hiring manager within that department that you've applied for, send a direct but polite message to those folks saying, hey, I've recently applied for X role within your organization. I really admire X and Y that you do within this organization. I would really appreciate getting 10 minutes with you virtually to understand how I can maximize my application in order to secure the role. It might be that 10, 12, 15 people don't say anything back to you, but the more frequently you do these things, the more likely you are to get someone to respond back to you and secure a role. When you do things like easy apply on Indeed or LinkedIn, it's the most crowded part of the funnel with respect to job hunting. What you want to try and do is maximize your opportunity in the less crowded elements of the hiring process. And this is by speaking to the hiring managers and the recruiters. You want to build the rapport, the relationships, and also build up your intel to understand what people looking for candidates of your caliber within the field that you want to go for are actually interested in hearing about. So what you're trying to do is build out your own knowledge, your own network, so that you can actually take this forward, even if you don't end up getting hired by those organizations. People in similar fields will be looking for similar experience or skills. More so, these individuals end up being a revolving door where even if you don't get hired by them in company X, individuals might move to company Y and Z, where they might be looking for a fresh pool of candidates. So what you want to do is build up your network and your database of information so that you are in a unique position where you've marketed yourself well to land roles. And some roles might not necessarily even be advertised, but what you have done is built a strong enough relationship with individuals so that you are front of mind when opportunities do strike. And one of the main ways by doing that is spending time with these individuals and letting them understand who you are, and vice versa, you understanding who they are.
To show off your achievements, engaging content, post about a cool marketing campaign that you've seen that you really enjoy and why you think it resonated with the audience. Why did it work? Show your employees that you actually care about what you're wanting to go into, and through that you'll build a really good network, and you might just find your job through LinkedIn like I did.
And rather than being a name on a CV that's forgettable, you become the person that they've had a coffee chat with in the summer of 2025, for example. And this is how you leave an impression on someone. What I see first-gen professionals miss is the fact that they don't build out these networks, because networks do half the grunt work for you. And it's really difficult when you don't have that access to build that out, to really start working on that early doors.
I love KPIs. I think it's the best way to measure someone. We used to do, every day you had to get 3 leads, right? And then you would add 5 managers around that. So you put 5 new managers on the system from the leads that people are interviewing at. And then you would follow up with CCs, right? So business development calls around that. And then you would follow up with 10 sends. So if you followed that process, there's no way that you can't not pull jobs. And I think I became so addicted to, I wasn't getting the deals over the line to start off with, but my wins internally was that I was beating everybody else on the KPI. So I knew eventually it was going to happen.
Number 3 is making your CV understandable in 6 seconds. Most recruiters and ATS systems flip through CVs very quickly. I've made a separate video about this, but what I did want to highlight is that you need to make sure that your CV isn't too verbose. Recently, I had someone give me their CV that was 4 pages long, and within that, a lot of their experience was getting lost. They'd listed out every single thing that they had done in previous roles. And this indicates to recruiters and hiring managers that you don't necessarily understand what role you'll be doing. Not every bit of your recent job will be relevant to the role that you're applying to. There'll be relevant elements to it. So making sure that that's front and center of people's attention is super important. The other mistake that I also see is the lack of evidence of the benefits that you've actually created within a role. I'll often see people writing responsible for managing a team inbox. What you want to say is cleared a 400 email backlog within 3 working days and reduced response times from 3 days to 1 day. What you're really trying to show an organization is that you're able to save them money, time, and by responding to clients and customers quickly, you're able to ensure really good customer service, which should ensure that the organization has repeat business, but also ensures that folks end up recommending their organization and comes back to them through loyalty, and their revenues eventually increase. So you've always got to think about how it is that you're going to improve the company's bottom line through saving them time, money, or through reducing hires.
I hire for attitude over experience because I don't have the experience, and I'm pretty good at what I do. And so I think there are some positions where you need people that have been there, seen it, and done it.
The other thing that I also see is overly manicured CVs where there's lots of pictures and diagrams and bar graphs showing 90% strong on communications. A lot of the ATS systems can't even pass that through. So you're better off putting descriptive words in your CV and highlighting those skills and making it really visually easy to identify these things, unless you're going for an out and out creative role whereby you've got to have a strong portfolio, or you're going into a design agency, for example, whereby looks really do matter. For other regular roles, I would just say making sure that the experience is clearly legible is so important in being able to maximize your chances of getting selected, especially as more and more organizations are starting to digitize their recruitment process. So my biggest tip about CVs is you should always be thinking, so what? What was the impact of you carrying out action X or Y? This is what you need to highlight in every single part of your CV. Number 2 is something that's not really spoken about, by recruiters and hiring managers, but it's about storytelling within your CV. What we should ideally see with you as a candidate is that as time has gone on, you've actually increased your experience or got more qualified in doing X, Y, and Z. Because what we're trying to show is, as time is going on, you're becoming more and more of a refined professional. And this could mean that you've been a jack of all trades in a lot of organizations, whereby you're increasing the number of skills that you have got. So by that, I mean that you're more of a generalist, and this can serve in certain industries, especially if you're going into a world like consulting, whereby people get often pushed into different opportunities and roles. And with very minimal supervision, you're expected to swim. So if you're looking to apply to those type of roles, by showing how good you can be as a generalist, rather than showing progression by becoming a manager or a senior manager very quickly, people can actually see that you're a very versatile candidate, and that works really well. On the other hand, if you're looking for, say, a promotion, what would be really good is you showing that within organizations, or from a previous experience to another experience, you've gone from doing that role to then becoming a team lead, or that you've started to manage folks, even on an informal basis, showing that you can take more responsibility and that you're becoming more of a man manager. In most professional jobs, often seniority comes with the expectation that you start managing a team, often 1 or 2 people in the early stages, but then very quickly, as you say, amount to 5 to 6 years experience. This will then expand into 3 or 4 people that you'll be expected to manage. So what you want to be able to showcase here is that you are able to work strongly within a team, but also be highly organized, be an effective communicator, manage key performance metrics, ensure that your team is happy and satisfied and well looked after, that you're keenly invested in their development. And all this hinges on you being a trustworthy person, a good communicator, someone that's able to be highly organized. So by showing that you're able to progress within your experiences, showcases to hiring managers that you are worth the next tier of income, and not just someone that they hire and they have to manage. And if you have started to informally manage people, say which elements responsible for their weekly one-to-ones, whereby you were measuring them against X metric, which resulted in your team dealing with an extra 20% of service requests within your SLA time. Things like this show an organization that you're able to bring value, not just for yourself, but for the wider team as well.
What would you see as success from me in this position as a manager? Is it my direct reports performing better? Is it me getting better results for the organization? Is it just like longevity of my direct reports in terms of how they stay? There's so many different views of success as a manager, and I would get really clear at what that looks like to your organization, your manager, and the organization as a whole. You don't need to pretend that you've managed someone for 10 years in order to be able to manage this person.
And my number one rule for first generation job hunters is, if you get the opportunity to interview, then follow up. It doesn't have to be long. I actually recommend you keeping it quite short and sweet. So just emailing folks back with 3 to 4 lines about being grateful for the time that they've given you to interview, picking out one specific thing that stood out to you in the interview, and that could be, thank you for letting me share my experiences of project management. I really enjoyed talking you through that. Or if they've answered a question that you've asked really interestingly about the company's growth into the South Asian market, reference that to show that you've been actively listening. And then just say that you're looking forward to hearing back to them once the process has wrapped up. This shows that you're highly engaged within the conversation, and often it shows that you're a polite and professional individual that really values relationships and that you're a good communicator. I would say 80 to 90% of the people that I interview don't actually follow up with me. And often it's these niceties when you've got a hairline between folks' experience or skill set that can really set people apart, because through that email, what you show is that you're organized, that you're polite, and that you can manage stakeholders, and that you're a really good and open communicator, even in a stressful environment like in an interview. And these are the type of people that you want to be working alongside, because in every role you'll need strong communication, teamwork, and collaboration. And this will also allow you to build out your network. Even if you're rejected, I would recommend you to add the folks via LinkedIn or via an email and ask them if you can check in with them on an infrequent basis, because you really enjoyed the recruitment process and really enjoyed getting to know these individuals. What you're trying to do is keep leads warm and actually learn from your experience. It might be that in about 6 to 9 months' time, when the individuals have actually got to know you a bit better, they can then tell you the real truth behind why they've gone with candidate X or candidate Y over you, and what you can do to build out your experience. And you can take that intel to then interview better at a different organization. I always think rejection is redirection, and there is always some learning to be had within a recruitment process. So it's super important for you to start leveraging the context that you make within the recruitment process. And you just never know, by you keeping those good relations, you might get hired for a different role within the team, or another role may come up, or you might even get referred to a different team. So it's always good for you to keep good relations to those that may even be delivering you bad news in the short run.
He thinks the next 5 years are going to belong to people who are kind and have humility, those who built reputations worth defending. And he's not saying it because it sounds nice. He's saying it because he watches what's happening online for a living, and he can see the cracks forming. Gary Vaynerchuk has been telling people what's about to happen on the internet about 3 years before they're ready to hear it. Social, creators, attention, AI. He was early to YouTube, Twitter, TikTok.
So in summary, mirror the job description, get a name for someone within the organization that's involved within the recruitment process, sell results, not duties, ensure there's a strong narrative behind your CV and it makes sense in a chronological order, and follow up like you mean it. So for the homework section of this video, I would recommend you to find 3 roles that you're keen to apply for, create that strong checklist first and foremost. Find someone within the organization that's involved in the recruitment process. Ensure that your CV is full of results-driven bullet points. Number 4 is using AI. Ensure that the narrative that you're trying to sell, which is that you've been progressing within an organization, or whether you're a generalist and acquiring lots of skills along your university and your internships, is clearly displayed, and get AI to help you to do that. I'll pop a prompt into the description below for you to be able to do that. And once you do get to interview stage, ensure that you follow up with the person that's interviewing you, whether that be the HR person or the hiring manager, and stay in touch with them for at least 6 months. And that could just be 1 or 2 touch points. None of this is about being the loudest candidate or about being the most networked person. It's about taking small but deliberate and strategic moves to ensure that you start building out the foundations to build a really strong career for yourself. And as I say, those small steps can really begin today with just 1 application that you send out. If this has been helpful, please do hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and for me to put out more content like this for you. Also, please don't hesitate to send this to someone who you think might find it useful. And if you're feeling particularly bold, please do drop in the comment section any of the tips that you found helpful, or any of the homework section you have actually carried out and what you found was the outcome of them. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your support for this small channel and helping us materialize our mission to give young people who are facing unemployment the tools to ensure that they can reach their full potential. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you so much.